If you're struggling with Spanish right now, there's a good chance you're making the exact same mistakes that I once did. Or rather, you're learning the same way I was taught. So I have to ask myself, what is it that went wrong? And, well, more importantly, what since changed? I actually failed Spanish at school, which is, if you think about it, quite funny considering that I now spend my life making Spanish content, speaking Spanish, and helping others to do the same thing. School just didn't click for me. Now, before I start, this isn't a video saying schools are terrible. Lots of people learn languages really well at school, but in my personal case, it just didn't work. Spanish was just another subject that I had to pass. So learning Spanish often felt very slow, frustrating, and honestly, it was quite boring. But then everything changed. I must have been about 13 or 14. I'd never been to Spain. I wasn't interested in Spanish culture. I didn't even know any Spanish people. So I had absolutely no emotional connection to the language. And well, as you know, if you don't care, it's incredibly difficult to remember anything. So back then, just imagine everything felt artificial.
Hello, Carlos. Hello, Maria. Where is the library?
I don't know. Where is the library? None of it felt like it was real life.
Caballero, ¿cómo le va? ¿Cómo te va? Bien, bien. ¿Sería posible, por favor, o me puede dar un café con leche? Para llevar, si se puede.
Fast forward a few years after my GCSEs, it wasn't actually Spain that flipped the switch in my brain. It was Switzerland. I went to visit family there for the first time. While I was there, I got invited to a party. And I met all these amazing people, right? All these Swiss characters who could just switch into English whenever they needed to. They'd sort of dust it off, and suddenly we were properly talking, making jokes, and actually connecting. And I remember still thinking back then, that's not just a skill. That's basically a superpower. The ability to unlock a second version of yourself, if you will, in another language. I wanted to know what that superpower felt like. ¿Adivina?
¿De dónde?
No, de Londres.
¿Londres?
Sí, señor.
¿En serio?
Sí.
Sí, pero hablan español.
At school, the biggest problem looking back now, we spent almost all of our time looking at Spanish. Looking at Spanish instead of listening to Spanish. We read, we wrote, we memorized vocabulary, we learned grammar rules, but we hardly ever had real conversations. And we certainly weren't surrounded by Spanish every day. Imagine trying to learn the piano without ever hearing music, or learning how to play football without ever having kicked a ball. That's what I would say learning Spanish felt like at that time. Lots of theory, but very little communication. So that same weekend, back in 2015, I decided I was going to go back to Spanish. Not because I needed it for an exam though, but because I could suddenly picture myself in the future actually speaking it fluently, like those people at the party. And once I had that picture in my head, believe you me, I could not let it go. I became obsessed with it, certain that one day I'd get there. And that, my friends, is when everything started changing. We live in the best time to learn Spanish. There are incredible podcasts, you have YouTube channels, Netflix, native content, music, AI. You can immerse yourself in Spanish from your own bedroom. So learn like people actually speak. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that languages, they're spoken, they're not written. Which leads me on to the Immersive Spanish way. That's why I built Immersive Spanish the way I did. I wanted people to spend more time listening, repeating, and thinking in Spanish, because that's how we naturally learn. You hear something,
¿Me puede dar? Which means, can you give me?
you copy it, you use it.
¿Me puede dar, por favor, tomate y aceite?
Again and again, until it becomes automatic. Another thing I wish I had at school was someone to actually practice speaking with. And that is why I built Fluency Builder. Instead of just reading dialogues in a book, you can actually have conversations with Rodrigo, your AI Spanish coach. So, want to order food? Practice it. Need to take a taxi? Practice it. Checking into a hotel? Practice it. Even making small talk. You can practice that with Rodrigo. The idea is simple. Instead of waiting until you're in Spain to have your first conversation, you can practice hundreds of times beforehand in the Immersive Spanish Fluency Builder app. And if you do that, when the real moment comes, when you arrive to your place of choice in Spain or Mexico, wherever it may be, it's not going to feel so scary at that point.
¿Esteban ahí?
Sí, iros con él, ¿vale?
¿Nos van a cuidar?
It's going to feel familiar because practice makes things less intimidating. Looking back, did I really fail? Yes, I did. I failed Spanish at school, but I don't think I failed Spanish. I just hadn't found back then the right reason to learn it yet. So once I found that reason, everything became easier. If you're struggling with Spanish today, maybe you just haven't found your reason yet. Maybe you need to stop treating Spanish like a school subject and start treating it like a way of connecting with real people, because that's what language is. It's not vocabulary lists. It's not grammar exercises. It's conversations. It's travel. It's friendships. It's perhaps romance, if you're lucky. It's understanding multiple different cultures. And once you start leaning into one of those reasons, Spanish becomes a lot more enjoyable. I'd love to know in the comments, did you start learning languages at school? Or was your experience like mine? And if you are learning Spanish now, keep going. You might be one conversation away from falling in love with the language. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hasta luego. Ciao.